He said you'd come. Now let's hope you're not too late.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Ghoul Non talks. Ghoul Non talks. Talk just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Say what you think of it. Ghoul Non talks. Ghoul Non talks. Talk just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Say what you think of it. Ghoul Non talks. Ghoul Non talks. Talk just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Say what you think of it.
Welcome to Jumanji.
Hello everybody, welcome to another Is It Worth a Tenner review from Ghoul Non Talks. Hi, my name's Jason, I'm the host of the Ghoul Non Talks podcast, as you know. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Yeah, it's been a little while since I've done a review, and I do apologize for that. As I mentioned on the last one, you know, life stuff just happens sometimes, and you have to kind of take a break and prioritize other things. But anyway, I'm back in the hot seat. I'm here, and this is going to be a slightly different Is It Worth a Tenner review, because I'm actually going to try and do two movies at once on this review. So that means this one's going to be slightly longer than the usual format that you're used to. Hopefully you won't find it too distracting, and I will try to avoid rambling too much, as I usually do, as I'm doing right now. But yeah, I'm going to try and do the two of them together so as to just save us all a little bit of time, really. I have been seeing a lot of movies recently, and I just haven't had the time to do individual reviews for all of them. So I figured, why not, put two of them together and knock out the two in one. Well, today I'm going to be talking about two movies that I've seen fairly recently. One of which is The Predator, which came out in UK cinemas about 2 weeks ago now. And the other one is called Ghoul, which is less a movie and more a mini-series, really. I guess a web series is the more accurate phrase for it. But they're very contrasting in terms of my feelings and opinions towards the two of them. So first off, let's start with the biggie, The Predator. This was a movie that I wasn't really anticipating as such. I guess that's the wrong way to put it, but I am a big fan of the Predator franchise as a whole. It's one of the things that I've really enjoyed, especially the expanded universe and the things that have been done with the books, right up till the recent work that Dark Horse Comics have done with the Predator and with Alien and with the Prometheus franchise as well. I always talk to people about the series Fire and Stone, and how good that series is and how well it has melded together those three kind of universes and franchises, and how it's brought together, Prometheus, Alien and Predator into such a believable universe. Is something that, I feel the movie should have been doing a long time ago, really, and never have done. So I didn't really have, high hopes for The Predator going into this, because I've kind of fallen out of love with the Predator movies, because they've just progressively gotten worse, really, over time. But I did have some kind of hope for this movie, in the sense that because it was being written and directed by Shane Black, who is a filmmaker that I'm a big fan of, I thought, this is a good sign. This is somebody who was involved in the first Predator movie. He did some work ghostwriting the script, and he played Hawkins, of course, the iconic Hawkins from that series. So, for me, I thought that this was a real sign that we were going to get a return to some kind of form. Sadly, the answer to that, though, is no. And, we're not getting a return to form here. We're getting a movie that I think, frankly, is going to kill the Predator franchise for at least a decade. Where do I begin? Well, I guess I'll try and start with the few positives. But I mean, basically, for those of you who don't already know, The Predator is a movie set in the modern day. It's set within the movie Predator universe, but it only really references Predator 1 and 2. So the Predators from 2010 isn't referenced. Neither is Alien vs Predator, although there are a few kind of subtle nods here and there. but generally speaking, there isn't much reference to those particular movies. This movie is considered sort of a follow-on from Predator 2, basically. As said, it's set in the present day, and it starts by kind of introducing you to a character called Quinn McKenna, who's played by Boyd Holbrook from Narcos. He's a guy that I was a big fan of on the Narcos series. I really enjoyed Narcos. Well, I enjoyed the first 2 seasons of Narcos. The third season, not so much. But, he was somebody who stood out quite a bit for me alongside the main actor in that series. And I always kind of felt he has, a lot of charisma and talent within him. And I enjoyed his portrayal in Logan as well, where he had a short role in that movie, and I thought he was pretty good in that too. So I was looking forward to kind of seeing him on the big screen here, and here he plays a special forces soldier who, along with his platoon, are on a mission in South America, and whilst they're on a mission, they come under attack from a predator, and he's the lone survivor. He manages to steal something from the predator, and he ships it off to his son, who he's slightly estranged from, over in the United States, and he keeps the stolen item for safekeeping with his son. Then kind of what unfolds is a series of events based around the fact that he stole this item from the predator. The predator that was hunting his group becomes captured by some government forces and an organization which is tasked with kind of watching the stars, and they're all aware of the existence of the predator. They know the predator is there and have been preparing for years with a view to dealing with this predator and when it returns to Earth and so on and so forth. Then things kind of escalate from there, because it turns out this predator they've captured is a fugitive predator who's come from the predator home world and is on the run, basically on the lam on planet Earth. And another predator, what they call the upgrade predator, has been sent to capture this one. And the story kind of unfolds from there. Now, as you know, with these reviews, I don't give away spoilers too much, so I won't go too much further into what kind of happens with the plot and things like that. But there's a lot of problems with this movie. The positives are, I would say, that the first kind of 20 minutes of it are okay. As in they're fairly, it's a fairly kind of serviceable Predator 1 tribute movie, I guess. So the first kind of, as I said, the first 20 minutes are not too bad. They're fairly enjoyable, and you'll get some kicks out of it a little bit in terms of, getting back into a jungle setting and things like that. But beyond that, it really is a complete mess of a film. First of all, the script is really bad. I mean, you can tell this movie has been cut several times. Apparently there's been problems, or there were, quite highly publicized problems with the production of the Predator, and you can see it very clearly in the finished product that they've brought to cinemas, because it feels like you're watching 3 different movies at once. The tone of the movie shifts around wildly. You can't really tell whether it's a comedy or whether it's a horror or whether it's a serious movie that's trying to make a statement about something. It tries to do all of those things and fails on all levels, really. I think I maybe laughed once during the movie, and I'm sure that was at an unintentional place as well. The classic sort of Predator design is a plus. They've upgraded that, so to speak, so that you know this Predator has a slightly different mask design and some cool weapons and things like that, and all the practical kind of effects and things like that they did are very good, really, really good. Where it kind of falls apart is when the CGI kind of becomes involved, because the CGI for me is terrible, and I'm no expert on CGI and things like that. I'm just a fan, but I know what my eyes are telling me, and looking at it on the big screen, it just looked awful at certain points. In particular, the upgrade Predator, which I felt was just really weak and rubberish. It looked like sort of it looked like a Jello Man or something like that. It didn't feel like it had any real kind of texture and belonged in the actual scene. So that was really poor. The script, as said, was just really diabolical. I mean, some of the character arcs in here are dreadful. The characters don't go anywhere. They're given, some terrible lines, and at times I had to remind myself that this was a movie written by Shane Black, who is known for being, a terrific dialogue writer. He's somebody who knows how to deliver really punchy, witty lines, and has shown through his own kind of directorial work over the years that he's a more than competent director as well. So the fact that this movie feels so rushed in certain places, and just incoherent is just, really, really surprising, to be honest. There's just some really weird kind of things done with the plot as well that don't make a lot of sense. One of the characters is a young boy who's the son of Boyd Holbrook. He's played by a kid called Jacob Tremblay, who you'll remember from the movie The Room. And he's brilliant. Like, he's really, really brilliant. He's so good, this kid. I marvel at just how good he is, because he's way better than the material that he's given. The material's terrible, but his performance is really, really good, and he's probably the only person who can walk away from this movie with his head held high, because he's done a fantastic job. But yeah, they're just odd choices made left, right, and center. As said, his character, Jacob Tremblay, is autistic, and the way autism is handled in this movie just kind of is bizarre. It falls into that category that Hollywood kind of always does with people with mental illnesses and things like that, where it treats them like they're some kind of magician or something like that. And it's just odd because it doesn't make any sense. There's several characters who join Boyd Holbrook in this movie as well. They're referred to as kind of the crazies, or the loonies, I think is the name they call themselves. Played by various actors like Trevante Rhodes and Alfie Allen, Thomas Jane, Keegan-Michael Key. And they're all great, performers in their own right. They're all really, really good people that I've enjoyed in other movies, who in this movie just bored the hell out of me, or just left me confused, because the dialogue they were given and what the script demands from their characters is just so odd, so odd. It really is. Like, there's certain points that you'll just be scratching your head thinking, what was that, there's lots of kind of blood and gore, but it's the pacing in the film is so bad that none of it really matters. It just kind of, to me, it felt like excessive. And that's a weird thing to say, because I'm certainly not a prude when it comes to movies, and I have no problem with, films being quite explicit with what they do, provided that there's, a correct context for what you're doing. But here it just kind of felt like, I don't know, like they couldn't think of anything else to do. Or, you know what it is actually? No, I know what the problem is. They substituted tension for gore. Whereas in, for example, if you cast your minds back to the original Predator movie, what made the gory moments all the more impactful was, the skill with which the director, John McTiernan, kind of built suspense and pressure around the characters and the story, so that it built up to a crescendo, and then you got the gut punch of something shockingly violent happening, and that just kind of rammed the point home. Whereas here it's just kind of, let's cut a hand off here and a head there, and this person will bleed out there, and we'll chop this guy in half because that'll look cool. And it just doesn't really, there's no impact. It's just over the top. It really felt over the top to me. And yeah, it felt like they were covering up for the fact that, there was no way in which they were going to be able to build proper tension into this scene. I think there's probably one scene that I can remember that had, you know, a modicum of tension in it, where a character played by Olivia Munn, who's a scientist, is trying to get away from the predator in a laboratory. And that sort of sequence was quite well done. That felt like the Predator tradition of movies for me. But the rest of it, as I said, is just absolutely bereft of tension. The third act of the film is absolutely awful, just awful. I can't believe that they went and did reshoots, and that was the best that they could come out with for the reshoots. It just really is terrible. Again, I don't want to get into spoiler territory in case there are people who do want to go and see this. But yeah, just wow. I'm trying to think of another movie I've seen this year that's had as weak a third act as The Predator, and I can't think of one. Not off the top of my head anyway. It just was weak, really weak. There's an obvious kind of attempt at setting up a sequel, which I doubt is going to happen now, considering that the movie is, it's making some money, but certainly not enough to justify the amount of expense they've spent on this movie, which is upwards of about 100 million, the last report I heard. And it just, it feels really, heavy-handed and ill-conceived. There's literally a key character in the plot who dies, and it's done in such a ham-fisted way that, none of the characters kind of even acknowledge that he's gone, and it's just like you're just left to go, oh, okay, well, he's dead, and that's the end of that, and move on. The Predator is really not a film I could recommend you spend a tenner on. So is it worth a tenner? No. If you really, really want to see it, then fine, go ahead. If you're a Predator, diehard Predator fan. But I suspect if you are a diehard Predator fan, you're going to be disappointed by what you see. Because I sure as hell was. But yeah, I mean, The Predator, no, I can't recommend it to you. I'm sorry. I can't do that in good conscience. But if you do want to see The Predator, then as said, it's still out in UK cinemas at the moment. So you should be able to pick it up at your local multiplex. But otherwise, I would say wait until it comes out on a streaming service somewhere and check it out then, as said, if you really want to see it. Now, on to the second movie. And this movie is a movie I feel the complete opposite about. Sorry, I keep referring to it as a movie. It's not really a movie. I know it started life as a movie, but it's actually more a mini-series. Anyway, what I'm talking about here is a series on Netflix called Ghoul. This series came out this year. I only just kind of discovered it not too long ago, actually, about a week ago, when I was sort of doing one of my Netflix surfing sessions and stumbled across the actual page for it on Netflix. It's actually a really, really good miniseries. So let me explain a little bit about it. It is, as I said, a web series. It's a horror, and it's set in India in kind of like the near future. And it's this really kind of totalitarian future where India has become this semi-fascist state where, education is very much controlled and monitored, and religion is strictly policed, and in particular, Muslims and the Islamic faith is strongly controlled by the state. And within this world, there are like a group of freedom fighters, I guess. Well, one man's terrorists is another man's freedom fighter, so we can call them freedom fighters. But there's a group of freedom fighters who have been, causing trouble for the state and killing innocent people, apparently. And so the state have put together various task forces to kind of deal with this threat. And what they do when they capture these threats is they take them to this like kind of secret internment camp, where they torture these people and get them to confess to crimes, sometimes crimes that they didn't commit, and then they kill them. And the story of Ghoul kind of focuses on a main character called Nida, who's played by an Asian actress called Radhika Apte. And Nida is somebody who comes from the Muslim faith, and she's from an Islamic background, and her father is, among other things, a teacher. And she decides that she wants to join, these government special forces, and she decides she wants to do something to be seen as a patriot, to be seen as loyal to her country, India. This puts her at odds somewhat with her father, who is very much a believer in freedom and free will, and sees kind of what the government is doing as fascism, and is very much against that, though he is careful not to kind of publicize his views so much. Anyway, he ends up running afoul of the government forces, and Radhika joins these government forces after training in an academy, and because he's run afoul of these government forces, he's taken to this same internment camp. Now it turns out that Radhika, after she finishes her training, which is in enhanced interrogation techniques, she is sent to this same internment camp to interrogate several prisoners that they have locked up there. And as the plot progresses, the government forces manage to capture one of their biggest targets, a terrorist called Ali Saeed, and they take him to this internment camp for questioning and so on. Anyway, as the kind of events unfold, it turns out that there is a presence of something very, very dangerous and evil within this internment camp. And as a series of kind of strange events start unfolding and violent events, Nida is then kind of faced with a decision where she has to basically fight for her life to survive, surrounded by enemies on both sides, and as said, this malignant force. And what unfolds is really kind of one of the most exciting and sort of gripping web series I've seen in a while. The idea I thought was brilliant, and I'm somebody who's a fan of different cultures, and very much a fan especially of the mythical elements of different cultures, and this series kind of explores some sides of Arabic folklore, and some sides of Islamic faith that you don't normally see in movies that we get over here. And it's really, really well done. Some of the practical effects they pull off in this series are fantastic as well. Just as I said, the complete opposite of Predator, really, in the sense that in this kind of series and this kind of scenario and setting, the filmmakers realize that less is more, and that's what they do. They're very careful about how they portray certain scenes and about how they handle certain set pieces and situations, and it comes through really well. You can see there's a lot of passion and love behind the product, behind the series that they've made. And you can see as well that the actors are taking it seriously, and they're taking it seriously because the script is actually really good. There's some excellent dialogue in there, and the performances are brilliant. As I mentioned, Radhika Apte is the star of the show, and she's just superb. Like, she's just such a compelling actor. And she's in the tradition of Ripley and Sarah Connor and those kind of just super badass female protagonists. She's given like so much depth to her character and complexity as well. That's what is so strong about the writing for this show is the complexity of the characters involved. Nobody is a one-dimensional, this is a good guy, this is a bad guy. There's kind of shades of grey with everyone, and you can and it leaves you with enough to debate about whether people were making the right decisions or the wrong decisions. And as said, in these kind of shows, good people sometimes make bad decisions, and those bad decisions can have even worse consequences, and that's definitely at the heart of what Ghoul is about. But it's got some terrific horror in there as well. It's actually co-produced by Blumhouse Productions. Blumhouse Productions, who you should probably know that name by now because they're just about one of the biggest names in horror movies in Hollywood. Blumhouse Productions are the people who produced Jordan Peele's Get Out, Happy Death Day, loads more. Pretty much any horror movie you can think of that you enjoyed over the past 5-6 years, Blumhouse Productions were involved in it. And it gives a certain pedigree to the series, but not that it really needed it anyway, because as I said, the writing and directing are so strong, and the acting is so strong as well. Some of the other supporting actors are just brilliant. I mean, some of them I'd never actually heard of before. I'll hold my hand on my heart. I haven't watched a lot of Indian cinema recently. I have to go back some years because I was a bit of a fan of Indian cinema back in the day, but I'm going back quite a few years to think of some of the people that I remember. So yeah, a lot of these actors I hadn't really heard of before, but they're terrific in this series, really terrific. And as I said, the quality of the writing is the thing that stood out for me, because it's just so strong and believable. Characters make believable decisions within this series. Whereas, as said, again, I hate to keep going back to the Predator, but the Predator is the complete flip side, where people just do the dumbest things that don't make any sense. So Ghoul is a series that I absolutely recommend to you. Is it worth a tenner? Yes, hell yes. As I said, it's one of the most enjoyable things I think I've seen this year. And it came as such a shock to me because it's such a, it's really flown under the radar. I think a lot of people didn't really hear about it over here. I mean, I know it's proved popular in India, but I think over here a lot of people haven't heard of Ghoul at all. So I'd absolutely urge anybody who's got a Netflix account to go and check out Ghoul. If you want something that feels, fresh and original and gripping and scary, but also gives you something to think about too, then yeah, go and check out Ghoul. It's absolutely superb, man. As I said, it's available now on Netflix, so you just need to type in Ghoul in your Netflix search box and it should come up, and you can get to checking that out. Alright, well, that'll do it for me. Thanks a lot for listening along. I know this one's been a little bit longer than the usual Is It Worth a Tenner reviews I do. I'll try and keep them brief in future and go back to doing one per episode, because I know this makes for a bit of a longer listen for everybody. So I really appreciate you having the patience to sit through that. Thank you. And I'll be back again soon with another one of these. In the meantime, I said, if you're new here, then please do check out some of the other reviews that we've done. You'll find them all on the podcast channel, on the podcast app that you're using. And stay tuned at the end for a little bit of information as to how you can interact with us as well. All right, people, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Thanks for listening to us. If you're down with Woolong Talks, show some love by following us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at Woolong Talks. You can also find us online at www.woolongtalks.com or drop us an email at woolongtalkspodcast@gmail.com. We can also be found as part of the Britpod Scene Collective, and we're also officially E14 endorsed. Search for those hashtags to enjoy more content from us and from other great British podcasters.